Welcome back to the UCL Fantasy video and podcast. This will be the best Limitless team for Matchday 12. If you still have this chip available, my recommendation will be to use it right now for the second leg of the round of 16 because you still got relatively poor teams still left in the competition, and when you go into the quarterfinals and beyond, you're not going to really get as many high-scoring games or clear favourites because some of these matches will be very difficult to separate, and we've got a few of them already in the round of 16, but I think it will be even worse in future rounds. And that's why at the beginning of the season, in my chip strategy video, I did recommend using the Limitless during the league phase. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single upload or live stream, both for FPL and UCL Fantasy, and there's a lot of content headed your way. The best wildcard team for Matchday 12 will be on the horizon. The same goes for my team selection, and next Tuesday, there'll be a deadline stream for UCL Fantasy once again. It'll be a pleasure to have you on board. Check all the links in the description below, which includes my Patreon, the Championships, Discord server, UCL Fantasy League, which you can see on screen. The code is cCaFxb. There's also my X, Instagram, and Blue Sky as well. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. I'll discuss other key factors such as form, the weekend's action, injuries, and suspensions in future podcasts, which includes my wildcard and team selection videos. But in this particular episode, I'll be discussing the best 50-man squad on the Limitless up until now, and this video is recorded on Friday morning, and things could definitely change over the weekend, and I'll discuss any possible modifications in my deadline stream as well. But let's start off with the two goalkeepers. Remember, with the Limitless, it's only for one match day, then your team reverts to how it was before you activated the chip, and you've got no budget restrictions, so it's like a free hit from FPL, but in this case, budget will not be an issue, so you can go for the most expensive players in each position and really focus on the second leg of the round of 16. After having surgery on his thumb and reportedly missing several weeks, possibly even months, Jan Sommer is now available. He was in the squad to face Feyenoord in the first leg, a 2-0 victory for Inter Milan on their travels, and Jose Martinez played very well once again, and he could play in the second leg, but I think Jan Sommer will take his place, and that's why I've included him in this best Limitless team. And the good thing about it is usually in my deadline streams, we get a leaked lineup by Sky Sports Italia, and I relay that information to you, and we can see who's going to start between Jan Sommer or Jose Martinez. But the early kickoff on Tuesday will be Barcelona versus Benfica, so you don't need to worry about who's going to start for the Catalans or for the Portuguese outfit away from home, because we'll get those lineups before deadline. For the rest, of course, it will be hypothetical, predicted lineups, and even with Inter Milan, that will be the case. But every single time I've read out that Sky Sports Italia predicted lineup is essentially a spot on, and I think that could give a lot of important information on the best defenders to invest in from the Nerazzurri, and also the choice of goalkeeper. I think long term, if you're looking at the wild card or just buying a goalkeeper in like Jan Sommer, it might not be the best option because they will face either Bayern Munich or Bayer Leverkusen in the quarterfinals, and then it's Barcelona in the semi-finals, and Inter Milan could reach the Champions League final. There's no doubt about it, but you have to be very conscious about your choice of goalkeepers. They might play on different days in match days 11 and 12, but that won't be the case in future rounds, which includes the quarterfinals starting from match day 13. But the second goalkeeper is David Raya, and a bit similar to Sommer, he might not be the best goalkeeper long term, because if Arsenal go through, and I say if, they are 7-1 up at the moment against PSV Eindhoven, they will face Real Madrid or Atletico Madrid, and I think Arsenal wouldn't be the favourites at all in that matchup, and they'd probably get knocked out in the quarterfinal stage. But for match day 12, with that 7-1 lead, I don't think PSV will have any confidence of going through, and they might even rotate quite heavily. The same goes for Arsenal. I'd still expect Raya to start, and I think a clean sheet is possible for the Gunners. They have conceded one open play goal in this season's Champions League. The other goals they've conceded were a set piece, a corner against Sporting, and 2 penalties against PSV and Inter Milan. So I think Raya is a great choice, and by going for Sommer and Raya, you've got 2 goalkeepers playing at home with excellent fixtures, and when I talk about the clean sheet odds in my team selection video, both Inter Milan and Arsenal will be right up there. As a direct consequence of Inter Milan's sturdy defence and also their clean sheet probabilities against Feyenoord, I'd highly recommend a defensive double up, perhaps even a triple up. I think Inter Milan will go through, and they've got a great chance of keeping a clean sheet against Feyenoord, even if they rotate slightly, but the tie still hangs in the balance somewhat. It's not like Arsenal PSV where it's almost a foregone conclusion at this point, but Denzel Dumfries is one yellow card away from suspension, but you don't need to worry about that on the Limitless. The same goes for Bastoni, who picked up his second yellow card in matchday 11. I think if De Vrij starts, he might be the best option from Inter Milan in this defensive line. He's the highest scorer in UCL Fantasy in that position, and he's also got a lot of ball recoveries at his disposal. That's why he's actually above the likes of Dumfries, Bastoni, and Acerbi in that defensive line for Inter Milan. But I do think there are many different ways of covering this team defensively, so you can't really go wrong with any of them. And Denzel Dumfries offers that security of starts right now because Carlos Augusto was out in matchday 11 and he could return against Monza this weekend, and DeMarco will miss several weeks of action unless he does Jan Sommer and returns earlier than expected. But next up, despite facing one of the most informed teams in Europe, I'd still cover Liverpool defensively with one option, and this could either be Van Dijk or Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think for this one it's close, and Van Dijk will give you more ball recoveries, but he got booked in matchday 11, so he's also one yellow card away from suspension, and the threshold is 3 yellow cards before you get that 1-game ban. And all of these yellow card suspensions are wiped out after the quarterfinals, going into matchday 15 for the semi-final stage. And I think for a free hit / limitless in this case, I think Trent might be a bit more appealing than Van Dijk anyway because of the attacking potential through the assists mainly, and he can score the odd goal here and there, especially from set pieces. So I think Trent is a great option in this position, and the same goes for Gabriel. But what about Arsenal? Are they going to rotate because they are 7-1 up? Do they just focus on the Premier League right now, which to be fair is kind of gone for them in terms of winning the title, and all their focus will be on the Champions League, but they can afford to rotate a little bit and still get the job done, play a few youngsters or fringe players. Maybe Zinchenko can get a game here and you might want to go for him as a punt. But if that was the case and Arsenal did rotate quite heavily, then PSV would have a decent chance of scoring, especially if they go relatively strong and try to make an impression and make up a little bit for their disaster class in the first leg. But if Gabriel starts, I'd highly recommend him. There's also William Saliba, who for me was the more impressive of the two in the first leg, but ultimately both of them will not do you wrong, and over the last couple of years, I think Gabriel has been Arsenal's best defender and arguably the best player on such a consistent basis. But let's now complete this defensive line, and you might be very confused or surprised by this pick, but I would still recommend Grimaldo, and if you aren't feeling Bayer Leverkusen defensively, you could go for Upamecano from Bayern Munich, or perhaps go in a different direction, either doubling / trebling up on Inter Milan or Arsenal, or maybe going for Schlotterbeck, maybe a Lille defender like Alexandro. Ultimately, with this Limitless team, and the same goes for your transfers and your wildcards, you want to kind of follow up on your predictions. So if you think a certain team will keep a clean sheet, then maybe go for that sort of asset and go in a different direction to separate yourself from the crowd. But I think Bayer Leverkusen Bayern Munich will be different to the first leg, and whilst the Bavarians will likely go through, this is a Limitless team which is only designed for matchday 12, and I think Leverkusen could keep a clean sheet. And with Grimaldo, he's got so many routes to points through goals, assists, and the odd ball recovery, so that's why he makes it into this team. But if you aren't feeling it, I completely get it, and Upamecano will be my favourite from Bayern Munich. But the final defender is Jules Koundé, who got 8 points against Benfica in the first leg. There's also Inigo Martinez or Wojciech Szczesny in goal, but I would probably go for Jules Koundé right now. Even in the long term, Jules Koundé will be my favourite Barcelona defender, but Wojciech Szczesny at 4 million might be the best value in that Catalans defence. Now with Grimaldo, of course, once again, I think that 3-0 lead for Bayern Munich might lead them to be very defensive in the second leg, and a few weeks ago it was a goalless draw at Bayer Leverkusen Stadium, and Bayern Munich were very happy with the point because they have that 8-point lead in the Bundesliga. They've maintained that in that time frame, so it could be something similar here with that 3-0 advantage, and that's why Grimaldo could be a great pick for matchday 12. In the case of Jules Koundé, of course, and Barcelona, Kubarsi is suspended for the second leg with that red card after that professional foul, so to speak. So I do think with this defensive line, you've still got a good chance of clean sheets across the board, goals and assist potential, and the ball recoveries, and some exciting picks in there like Trent, Dumfries, and Grimaldo, and 2 defensive double-ups for Inter Milan and Arsenal, who will be in the top 2, in my opinion, for the clean sheet odds. When you're building your UCL fantasy team, I'd always advise you to be mindful of the Tuesday-Wednesday balance. I don't think you should prioritize it over everything else, but it's something worth considering. It's an important factor, and preferably you'd have more Tuesday players than the Wednesday. and Marco Asensio does play on the Wednesday, so maybe he's not as appealing as he would have been for matchday 11, but he came off the bench and scored a penalty for Aston Villa, which will definitely appeal both FPL and UCL fantasy managers who are looking to invest in Marco Asensio. He was in my team selection, of course, last time out, but I got rid of him once we saw that lineup and he wasn't in there. But Morgan Rogers won player of the match and delivered 9 points overall after forcing an own goal there, and Marco Asensio got 6 points off the bench. They're the two favourite options in that midfield. I think Yuri Tielemans is a nice differential, but he would be a level below those two, and Ollie Watkins and Rashford in the forward line will be slightly appealing, especially Watkins, despite that blank in the first leg. But if I had to pick one Aston Villa attacker overall, or in any single position, I think Asensio would be my favourite, and Morgan Rogers is a close second. Next up is Mohamed Salah, who blanked against PSG and played fairly poorly, and even against Newcastle where he got an assist in a 2-0 win. Salah didn't play particularly well, but he always gets those goals and assists, and at Anfield he's going to start the game and he's got a great chance of producing a return, even though he's facing a decent PSG side who were unbeaten from late November, but that came to an end in a smash and grab win in Paris from Liverpool. Alisson Becker was the standout on the day, and he was the main difference between a PSG win and Liverpool having a massive advantage going into the second leg. But next up is going to be a player I never thought I'd be recommending in UCL Fantasy again, not this season at least, but Martin Odegaard was flawless in the second half against PSV. I think the first 45 minutes weren't great from him. He was trying to make things happen and he was giving the ball away, but Arsenal quickly got into cruise control and that performance was just unexpected. They didn't score in the previous two games before that. PSV thrashing 7-1 away from home set multiple records, especially in terms of away performances in a knockout Champions League game, and the Gunners might have a lot of confidence now from now until the end of the season, but that can quickly change, of course, if they drop points against Man United, who have been struggling all season. So that Sunday game could be very important, but I think that 7-1 win could also be to the detriment of these UCL fantasy assets like Odegaard. Maybe his minutes will be managed. Does he even start the game? But if we get that inclination before the deadline, I think going for a punt like Odegaard, Marina or Trossard, even Wanyeri, who at 17 years of age has been extraordinary, these are all decent options, but long term, I would not be recommending them, especially in the quarterfinals against one of the Madrid clubs. But against PSV, and considering the circumstances and the way they played against Arsenal, if they give them the space again, I think the likes of Odegaard will have a field day. He has also scored against them in previous campaigns. That included a 4-0 win for Arsenal at the Emirates upon their Champions League return. So these two teams have met a lot of times in recent seasons. That also includes the Europa League 2 campaigns ago. But let's now go for another surprising option in Florian Wirtz. If you are backing Bayern Munich to also win the second leg, then you might want to go for Musiala or Elise, and the same goes for Harry Kane up front, of course. But I think Leverkusen might win the second leg, but still go out, of course, because Bayern Munich have such a comfortable lead right now, being 3-0 ups. But I think Florian Wirtz is still a great UCL fantasy option, and he's been very consistent in this season's competition. But there has been the odd blank here and there against Inter Milan, Bayern Munich, and Atletico Madrid. So maybe against the top teams, Liverpool's another one, of course, maybe Wirtz does falter in this competition, but that is still quite harsh to say. He is so young and his potential is absolutely mad, to be quite honest with you, and he's one of the best midfielders in world football. The saying goes, although he's technically a winger, but out of position, Rafinha is another one who is competing for the Ballon d'Or. He scored the winning goal against Benfica once again, not for the first time this season, and in that 5-4 thriller, he won player of the match, scored a brace, and he followed that up with a 9-pointer in matchday 11. And going into the second leg, I think Rafinha will be one of the top captaincy options on the Tuesday. The only downside is that he's fairly template at this point. He's not a differential like he was in the summer when I constantly highlighted him as one of the best midfielders in the game. And I think there's no doubt that he's levels above Olmo in terms of minutes, and also the likes of Yamal with the goal contributions, especially with the goal scoring, where I think there is no comparison between the two. Lautaro Martinez scored the second goal in that 2-0 win against Feyenoord, winning player of the match and delivering 9 points for those owners. His ownership is only 8%, which makes him very enticing. If you are in the market for a forward in the second leg, I think Lautaro should be at the top of your agenda, especially being at home. I think he'll start and Inter Milan will go quite strong to get the job done. and he would be my favourite Inter Milan attacker. Even over Marcus Thuram, who scored the opener, Calhanoglu, who missed the first leg, and he has been an injury doubt for some time now, but he should be available fairly soon, and he's on penalties. But Lautaro Martinez remains my favourite option, and I think you also want to find a few differentials here and there that can make all the difference. But as always, we are blessed with options in this forward line. Jonathan David got an assist against Borussia Dortmund in the first leg, and he's been so consistent all season. Guirassy himself has blanked in the last 2 Champions League matches, but before that, he has been scoring and assisting in every single Champions League game, and away from home, he still hasn't blanked in this tournament, but that could change in Matchday 12. Harry Kane scored a brace and delivered 15 points, so he's another one that went slightly under the radar for the first leg. Rodrigo scored a brilliant goal in the Madrid derby, and Julian Alvarez scored an even better one to equalise at the time, and he does make it into this team. But I have to say, the only forward who isn't locked in for this squad is Alvarez, so I think Lautaro is just pretty much penciled in for the best Limitless team for Matchday 12, unless during the deadline stream we get information that Lautaro doesn't start. But I think Alvarez is another differential, relatively speaking, with 12% ownership. If you are backing Real Madrid to go through, then you might want to go for Mbappe, Vinicius or Rodrigo instead. But I think Alvarez can still score even if Atletico go out, and my prediction is 1-1 for that game, and I'll give my final predictions during the deadline stream as well. But Alvarez does make it. I think he is the best Atletico forward. Griezmann's another one who's definitely worth a punt, but I think Alvarez is a level above, and he's on penalties. He scored a brilliant Panenka against Courtois only a couple of weeks ago, so he loves playing against Real Madrid, it seems. Could he make it 3 goals in 3 matches? It's definitely possible, but to complete this squad, I'm going for the template pick of Robert Lewandowski. I think he's another one who's very nailed on for this Limitless team, and even for the wild card or using free transfers, I'd still highly recommend him, and he's probably my favourite striker for Matchday 12, but Lautaro Martinez might have something to say about that. And there are even more forwards I haven't even mentioned from other teams as well, but you can't have them all. Let me know your favourites down in the comment section below, and let's talk about the captaincy very briefly before I highlight other options in each position. So on the Tuesday, on the 11th of March, I'd be tempted by a punt on Lautaro Martinez, but if you want to go a bit more template and preserve rank, I think Rafinha or Lewandowski would be excellent choices as well. I'd still expect a high scoring game between Barcelona and Benfica, not like the first leg. I think the red card changed the game a little bit, and we saw that 5-4 thriller earlier this season, but I think one of those 3 would be excellent choices, and you can afford to go for a punt or go left field with your captaincy pick on the Tuesday, because if it doesn't go right, you've got another choice and chance on the Wednesday to set things right, and that's where I'd be looking at the likes of Odegaard as a punt potentially. I'm not as enthused about those options. If you've got Mbappe or Vinicius Jr., you might want to captain them. The same goes for Alvarez, but I think on the Wednesday, I would probably stick with one of Odegaard or Alvarez. Even defenders can be captain in this game. Let's not forget Denzel Dumfries against Feyenoord at home would be an excellent shout. Gabriel on the Wednesday against PSV, kind of getting a clean sheet and maybe ball recoveries to get 8 or 9 points. That is something that could be on the cards, but I think that's the way I'd go about the captaincy right now. That could change, of course, in time for future podcasts, like the best wildcard team and my own team selection. But I think for those that end up going for the big hitters up front, like Vinicius or Mbappe, they'll be very tempted to captain them on the Wednesday. So I'm going to stick with Rafinha on the Tuesday for me personally, and Lautaro will be my kind of differential punt for the armband. In each position, the other goalkeepers to consider would include the likes of Alisson Becker, who kept a clean sheet against PSG and made so many saves. He made 9 overall and delivered 12 points, and he was my best differential for Matchday 11. I think Wojciech Szczesny is a nice shout, although I'm not really as keen on him as I would be with the other goalkeepers. And even Thibaut Courtois is not a bad pick, and you might even be backing the underdogs Lille to go on a decent run and be the dark horses of this tournament. I think Lille have a great chance of progressing now after that 1-1 draw, so you might want to go for their goalkeeper as well. But my favourite Lille player, apart from Jonathan David up front, will be Alexandra, who is a ball recovery machine. As for other defenders that I'd be looking at, I think Inigo Martinez is a decent alternative to Jules Koundé. I think Frimpong instead of Grimaldo is decent. The same goes for Upamecano or Kim Min-jae, depending on who you back to keep a clean sheet in that really difficult matchup. I know it's 3-0 to the Bavarians' favour, but I do think Bayer Leverkusen could still win the second leg. You've also got Jurien Timber, who opened the scoring against PSV, but there's also William Saliba, who might be an even better option than Gabriel for this game at least. And you've also got Virgil van Dijk in place of Trent Alexander-Arnold and any other Inter Milan defender that we know is going to start. That could be De Vrij, Acerbi, maybe Pavard, who made so many ball recoveries in the first leg. Not to mention, you've got Bastoni as well, who might be rested because of the suspension risk. The same goes for Dumfries, but I think any of those that start will be excellent choices. And let's not forget, if Sommer doesn't start, you would then go for Joseph Martinez on the Tuesday in terms of this best Limitless team. Morgan Rogers instead of Marco Asensio is a nice alternative. The same goes for Marino, Trossard or Wanyeri over Odegaard, but I also would encourage you not to get too carried away with Arsenal. I still wouldn't go for a quadruple up, especially in the long term. I don't think any Liverpool attacker can really cover Salah, so I'd still recommend him over anybody else, but you might even want to go for Dembele or Barcola if you're backing PSG to turn things around. That would be a huge upset because Liverpool have been the best team in Europe so far this season, and at Anfield, only Nottingham Forest have gone there and won in this campaign. Maybe Musiala or Elise over Wirtz would be another choice for you, and Yamal and Olmo could be very good punts as your third Barcelona attacker, but would I go for them over Lewandowski and or Rafinha? My answer would be no, but I think that game could still be very high scoring. Let's not forget Kokchu if you are backing Benfica to score a couple of goals. And up front, I mentioned a lot of them already. That could be Vinicius, Mbappe, Rodrigo, Jonathan David. Guirassy is still a good choice, and maybe if I end up selling him, that will be a massive regret of mine this season. And Thuram over Lautaro could be another shout. There are so many differentials and picks to choose from in UCL Fantasy, especially in that forward line. And there we have it. The best Limitless team for Matchday 12 has been covered. If enough changes need to be made because of injuries and other factors, they will be addressed in future podcasts, which could include my deadline stream on Tuesday for UCL Fantasy. You can see the first leg results on screen. Which was your favourite match and which one do you think will be the most exciting fixture for the second leg? Maybe we'll get some surprises in there. And ultimately, UCL Fantasy, FPL and football can be completely unpredictable at times. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then like the video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload or live stream for both FPL and UCL Fantasy. Our aim is to get this to over 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 33,000 subscribers. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, and I gifted 10 memberships in the recent deadline stream. There's also my Discord server, UCL Fantasy League, Spotify, and much more in that description. I wish you all the best of luck for the rest of the tournament. That includes Matchday 12, of course, and I'll see you on Tuesday for that deadline stream.